What's going on, Notre Dame fans? Mike Singer, blueandgold.com, back with a fresh episode of the Irish Huddle. It is Thursday, June 11th, and I'm joined by our senior editor, Lou Somogyi, and our football analyst, and of course, former Notre Dame captain and linebacker, Mike Goolsby. This is our second time going out on the Zoom. So again, if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast, that obviously has not changed, but you can find us on YouTube, search Blue and Gold Illustrated, and you can watch the podcast, which I think is a neat little thing. Lou, how we doing, man?
We're just about finishing the yearbook here, so that's sort of like one of the all-time great moments when we finished that.
I was a little bit worried that we weren't going to be able to get a podcast in this week, because I know you're working hard on proofing everything. That's the 2020 football preview, laying it on the line. It's got the 5 offensive linemen on the cover. Make sure go to blueandgold.com. We have details. So how you can get it before, I think it's Sunday. You can get free shipping. So make sure to go to blueandgold.com. I believe Blue Gold Online is the direct website to buy that. But if you just go to blueandgold.com, all that information is there as well. Mike, how's everything in Omaha, man?
Things are good. You know, Mike, you were talking about before we went live here, sponsorships and on-air ads. And I'm wondering, can we get one from like a Gillette or something? Did you guys just stop shaving? If we got a sponsorship from I'm thinking Gillette or something.
This is just my look, man. This is how I am all the time.
What's going on, Lou? Hard times.
Yeah, with the yearbook there, sleep is optional and eating is not mandatory either. But
yeah, so shaving goes way down my list.
I've always just wanted to look like a great Notre Dame linebacker captain and all clean cut.
Yeah, well, you got to hit the weights too, Lou.
Quite a bit.
Mike, I thought you were about to say we got sponsored by Jordan because you're wearing the Jordan hoodie there, but
yeah, I just got done training some kids and jumped on here. So, yeah, everything's good in Omaha, though. Ready to chop it up.
Yeah, for sure. So, podcast today is we were like, there's not a whole lot going on. Kelly had a press conference this week, kind of talking about, getting ready for the season. But, for nuts and bolts in Notre Dame football, there's really not a ton going on. So we figured let's just pose questions to the message board. So we got some good questions. We were talking before we started recording, kind of going through them. So it's going to be pretty fun. But before we get into that, we wanted to talk about new Notre Dame commitment, Ryan Barnes, a defensive back, 6'2", 180 from just outside Washington, D.C. in Gaithersburg, Maryland, Quince Orchard High School. He picked Notre Dame over Clemson, Florida State, Georgia, LSU, Michigan, Oklahoma, Oregon, Tennessee. The Vols were actually, Mike, this is crazy. This kid's got 30 offers, right? Just committed to Notre Dame. Last November, when he's playing his high school state semifinal game, they won. He had a great game. 2 days later, he lands his first offer from Tennessee. 7 months later now, here he is, Notre Dame commit over 30 offers. So he went from 0 to 100, as the kid saved his recruiting process. So I sent you his tape. What'd you think? What were kind of your impressions of seeing his film?
Yeah. He's what we briefly spoke of earlier. He's what folks are looking for. Again, that prototypical, the length. You read about the commitment and some of the commentary that's come out since. He's long. If you had a crystal ball, again, that Miss Cleo crystal ball, I'd probably project him as a safety. He seems to have that real similar body type to that Kyle Hamilton. Covered a lot of ground. What's interesting, it almost seems like, Mike, his star rating, if he's kind of parked at a 3-star, really hasn't caught up with his recruitment, because he's got everybody under the sun has offered the kid. So the 3 stars aren't indicative, and it might not boost Notre Dame's recruiting rankings on a national scale, but he's a player. He can run and he's long. Again, you can never have enough of those body types on the back end of your defense. The other thing that I really liked about him, and I'll beat this drum over and over again, the way the kid plays the game, He's definitely got a little bit of fire in his belly. He's having fun out there. Seems to love the game of football, loves to compete, which me, again, as an ex-player on the defensive side of the ball, that really gets me excited. So if you team him up with like a Nick McLeod, who's very boisterous on the field, it could be a lot of fun to kind of see some of that interaction on the back end.
So, Mike, when we did our podcast, our recruiting show, we brought on Preston Jackson, former, of course, one of your teammates, former defensive backs, now in the Tampa Bay area. We talked about Phillip Riley, who you guys both raved about for a while. He's also, Barnes, we talk about free safety. I could certainly see him as a free safety, but he's coming in at, let's just say, at corner. So you look at Barnes and Riley. In that 2020 recruiting class, Notre Dame, it was a little bit shaky in the secondary recruiting. How fired up are you about, these two guys for Notre Dame?
Yeah, load them up. A little bit, they're both really, really good sized corners, especially for that high school level. But if Barnes is listed at 6'2" and he looks it on the field, probably not as clean as far as the technique is concerned, footwork, hands, eyes, all those things that we're raving about with Riley, where Riley's really dialed in and really well coached, but doesn't have, again, quite the length of a Barnes. But yeah, load up the backfield. What's also interesting, we touched on this last week, in terms of like the level of competition, that ball that he's playing in Maryland, that Maryland area, that looks like really good ball.
It is.
Guys are flying around. So that would lend itself to, lend you to believe that he's going to come in. And I've said it before, tailback and corner is generically speaking, the two easiest positions for a young kid to come in and contribute right away. So if he's playing at a high level of football now, he's got a little bit of charisma, a little bit of shit to him. I'm excited. Let's go get more.
Now, Lou.
It's especially imperative, though, what you said, Mike, about him maybe projecting as a safety, because I'm looking at that 2021 roster, and conceivably, right now Notre Dame has 5 scholarship players on safety. 3 of them could be gone after that 2021 campaign. Houston Griffith would be in his senior season. Isaiah Pryor, who has 2 years left as a graduate transfer, if he doesn't leave after 2020, certainly would after 2021. And it's certainly not inconceivable that Kyle Hamilton, as a junior, could be on the NFL radar also in 2021. So basically what you have left is DJ Brown, who also I believe would be entering his final season of eligibility in 2021, and then Litchfield Ajavon. That's been an area, because they've moved a few, like Paul Moala, they've moved to the rover position. Derek Allen transferred to Georgia Tech. That's a position that's a little bit short on bodies. So what you mentioned about him, maybe long-term projection as a safety, I think that's going to be essential, because right now you do at least have 6 guys in the Notre Dame cornerback room with 4 years of eligibility.
Sure. Yeah. And we talked about, again, some of those folks, some of the different kids, again, maybe listed as a safety, but I think we talked about this once before. It wouldn't shock me, at least maybe situationally, Lou, where a Pryor can slip down in a 3rd and long position and maybe move to rover. And I mean, again, you've all got these moving pieces. Maybe you take your typical rover and move him inside on a 3rd and long, and then you could maybe work in a younger kid, like a Barnes at safety, if Pryor comes down and is playing depending on the personnel you're facing. So a lot of moving parts, a lot of athletes, a lot of interchangeable positions there. Again, it's all good as far as I'm concerned. Get athletes, get long athletes, get kids that love football. Let's roll it out and play. So yeah, it's exciting.
Do you envision him starting out at corner, Barnes?
To answer that question, Lou, the biggest question mark that I would have to answer your question, but I would need an answer to this is, how fast is he? I don't know how fast he is. I just don't know what his top end speed looks like. I just don't. So that in terms of matching up one-on-one, that makes me a little bit nervous.
Well, usually with longer players too, and he's listed at 6'2", and who knows? I mean, Ramon Henderson was listed at 6'3", and now he's listed at 6'1" since coming
He
in.
shrunk pretty quick. Yeah,
So I'm always leery, a little bit skeptical of the weights or times or heights that are given to you, the high school recruitment. So I think that is a good way to look at it, is let's see just how fast he is. But if he is 6'2", I mean, most people love that length at the corner position, but the ability to turn, flip hips.
The start and stop, Lou, is kind of, and again, it's just two different worlds, but that start and stop as a corner, the suddenness, coaches used to call it, that suddenness versus you've got more time to build up speed coming down from a safety. So it's just a little bit different. So that'll be interesting to see, is how well he can match up one-on-one, specifically that start and stop kind of short area quickness versus playing safety. So the coaches will figure that out. But again, you have the luxury of some flexibility there with him. Yeah,
you got Riley, you got Barnes, and we haven't even talked about Justin Walters, another defensive back commit for Notre Dame. He was the first DB pledged for the Irish in this 2021 class. Hard-hitting player from the Chicago area. Good stuff on Ryan Barnes. We're going to read a quick ad here before we get into our Q&As, which I'm excited about hearing your guys' answers on this.
Oh, geez.
Trade Last is a Notre Dame Idea Center startup that has pivoted its business model to a not-for-profit initiative to serve the medical responders selflessly sacrificing themselves during the crisis. They're doing so by providing free vacations post-crisis for the responders so that they can recover from the trauma they have experienced and reconnect with their families. Please consider helping this important initiative started by Notre Dame alums and staffed by Notre Dame student volunteers by visiting their website, tradelasts.com, and donating time in your second home, spreading the word to others, or supporting their GoFundMe page. Again, that's tradelasts.com. Thank you for your support of this deserving Notre Dame initiative. All right, Mike, let's get right into it. What are the three things, and this is questions from our message board. I don't have which poster said what, so apologize in advance. I just took the best questions. What are the three things in terms of talent that Notre Dame needs to beat the likes of Clemson, Alabama, and Ohio State 2 out of 3 times?
Yeah. Number one, and again, I urge all you fans to go back and watch the games from the past season, remove the emotion of watching it live. But the first thing that I wrote down, Mike, was poise. And I don't know if you can call it a skill or a trait or whatever, but we've played as a team now. We've played in enough of these big games. So if it's in offsides, penalties, or drop passes, it's like poise. Because those little tiny things are, like a drop pass in the first quarter will bite you in the butt in the fourth quarter. So I would go with poise. And then to me, it's speed on the outside on both sides of the ball. As we're just rolling out of talking about the cornerback position, you got to be able to match up. When those Ohio States, those Clemsons, those Oklahomas, I mean, look at the draft this past year. They have electric dudes, electric guys. That's a big area of improvement. And then to me, it's not necessarily another area to improve, but you got to lean on your strengths. And I still think you've got to be able to run the ball. And that's just more of a team psyche piece to me. Is like, if you've got athletic, again, electric athletes, sometimes those teams that are kind of modeled that way don't like to get into a fist fight. And you can kind of minimize their strengths by minimize that speed. So I'd like to see just that O-line play just go be elite. And then again, if we can find a special running back, and I think we might have one, and we've talked about this a little bit at length, you and I, Mike, but be able to lean on that running game. So to take a little bit of pressure off a book, especially early on in the game, some of those screen passes, you can turn them into crib calls. That would be my 3 answers. Lou, what do you have to say?
Those are really good answers, because when I look at the 2 losses last year, number one, you talk about the running game. They ran for 46 yards against Georgia and 47 yards against Michigan. It's 93 yards in those 2 games. And it was similar against Clemson in the playoff. as well. In these type of atmospheres, it's many times it seems Notre Dame does give up on the run. And when you had that inclement condition as you did at Michigan with the rain, Michigan pretty much refused to pass. It's like, we're going to be able to impose our will running the football in that type of environment. And I think there's a lot to be said for that mentality as well, to have that. And that goes back to some of that poise that you talked about with the first one. And when you talk about poise too, you had 12 penalties at Georgia last year, 6 of them infractions, offside infractions on the offense. That snap count and the noise and all, a little discombobulated there and all. And I think the second one you mentioned there, the edge, that's what Brian Kelly, in so many words, always kind of mentions indirectly as the missing link, because I think he feels, and if you look at the drafts and everything, the offensive line, the defensive line, they feel they can match up with most people in the trenches, and I'm including, the Alabamas and Clemsons and Ohio States, maybe not man for man, but they can go with most people, the linebackers, but it's the edge there, the receivers, the cornerbacks who are able to cover. When you look at just the pipeline that the LSU's, the Ohio States, the cornerback have especially, and then just your backup receivers at Alabama, my gosh, they're all projected as future first rounders pretty much. It's that speed on those edges and the skill position in general.
Yeah.
Since 2004, Notre Dame has had 3 running backs drafted, most of them in the lower rounds other than C.J. Procise at 3rd round. In that same time, Alabama has had 12. So 4 times the disparity there. And it's like sometimes people wonder, okay, well, what's missing? Well, those are the people who are carrying the football. They have the ball in their hands the most. You can't score without it.
Sure.
That's a big attribute.
Yeah, I think that, again, going back to the edge piece, those guys compete at a very high level day in and day out of practice. You've got a number 1 corner, an NFL first-rounder corner matching up against a future first-rounder wide receiver. So that builds that culture, and that kind of gets passed down. So, and you look at that team dynamic, the offense versus defense at practice, like, who's going to take the initiative there? Are the corners just going to dominate the wide receivers and then they're forced to step up, or vice versa? So they have to make each other better, again, competing and building that culture of practice. But I love that running back, Tyree. Again, he just seems a little bit different, seems special, a type of kid that can turn a 4-yard run into a 17-yard run. And yeah, in those environments, like when you're hanging with Clemson, you're hanging with them. I think I almost feel like that sense of urgency, or that like anxiety as a play caller might build, where you're like, well, screw it, let's just start throwing the ball because they're about to pop. Maybe we need to beat them. But it's like, no, we're fine. Just keep running the ball. And like I told Mike, I went back and watched that Michigan game because I'm catching all this shit from people on the message boards about my book. But how many possessions, Lou, did Ian Book and the offense even have in that game? Like where we had a concerted drive where it was an 8-play drive, an 11-play drive. A lot of it was 3 and out, So if you run the ball, it's first and 10. Okay, and now it's 2nd and 9, and now we're running again, and now it's 2nd and 7, or excuse me, now it's 3rd and 7. You need some more chunk plays out of the running game just to, again, relax Book, and you're not making him shoulder all the weight. But those are the 3 areas I think we can improve the most. So
the poise doesn't show up on these recruiting charts or anything. That's got to be built within. And a couple of years ago, when Notre Dame was 8-1, number 3 in the college football playoff rankings, and went down to Miami, you could see it all unravel very quickly. It escalated as the game went on. So that was a priority to, help that. Now they went to Virginia Tech the following year, and Virginia Tech was not the same caliber of team as it usually is. But you saw at Georgia, they were not intimidated by the moment. It was not too big for them. I think at Michigan, that was more of a case of I think there were some internal problems at that time with the bye week. There are a lot of things, from my understanding, that happened internally with the coaching staff, Chip Long.
Yeah, they got that Michigan game. I mean, I almost sent you a screenshot of my television, Mike, but there was a play, and it wasn't a screenplay. And Book had 4 dudes just breathing down his neck. Like it was just a jailbreak in terms of the offensive line. So, yeah, I think they got out physical. But, again, it goes back to the poise. I mean, that's the stuff that I miss as a player is like, man, how fun is this? Like, everything's against you. Like, literally, let's go let it hang. Let's go let it hang out and go play as opposed to playing tight. And that's got to be the mindset. And, again, we've played in enough of these games now, guys. You know what you're walking into. You know, a little bit of nervousness is a good thing sometimes. You can channel it the right way. So we'll see what happens.
We talked about poise last week or the week before when we talked about Tyler Buckner. I was like, hey, what do you think about him? You're like, I want to see how he prepares when his back's against the wall. So, I mean, you can have all the talent in the world, but you don't really know what these guys have until they do get in those situations, Mike.
No, yeah. You're going to be, you know, they call it baptism by fire, right? So, but yeah, I went back and watched Buckner. Yeah, he's a damn good player, and he throws from some different angles and stuff. But what goes on between a quarterback's ears and how calm they're able to stay, I mean, that matters because it's live bullets out there. So, yeah, you take somebody's physical traits and you've got to couple that at that position with the mental capacity they have as well.
All
What's
right,
next, Mike?
Let's move it. We're really shifting gears here, but here's the question for you, Mike. Having been there and done that, which is a big compliment. They think you've been there and done that.
Yes.
He certainly has. What are a few things you'd like to see changed or work harder on from the Notre Dame recruiting staff regarding recruiting?
The number one thing would be, you know, so the academic criteria and the academic standards is a thing, right? It's a thing, right? We can't take in every kid. We just can't, right? But again, I'm talking about some of these electric players. To me, I think it's okay to dangle a carrot academically. So if we're on a 4.0 scale and a kid is halfway through his sophomore year, Notre Dame's identified him as a player, let's not cross him off of our list if he has a 2.2 GPA. So maybe you dangle that carrot and just let him know that you need to get to hypothetically a 2.6, and then we can offer you. You know what I'm saying? So I feel I get the sense sometimes that we're crossing kids off a list potentially prematurely. A 14, 15-year-old kid, again, isn't a finished product on the football field, nor is he a finished product in the classroom. That was what happened to me. You know, Dan Saraceno, the admissions director, told me that I needed to go back and take another year of math in order to get me into Notre Dame. My high school only required 3 years of math. And I did it. And I had 30-something offers. I could have went anywhere. But I was like, I wanted to go to Notre Dame, and I understood the plan, and they were up front with me. So then I wasn't crossed off a list because I was not a great high school student, shockingly. That's one thing. And then two, yeah, you've just got to identify some of these kids earlier and work them. I mean, that Notre Dame, that brand name of Notre Dame, I think carries a lot of weight with a lot of kids, but some kids maybe from the South or different regions of the country, it doesn't. So you've got to get in their ear earlier on and work it, you know, really put the work in. I sometimes wonder if, like, some of these coaches, you know, I'm in sales for a living, have been forever. I think some of these coaches, not just at Notre Dame, but they would do well to take some sort of a sales course or read some sales books because there's different angles to take, there's different questions to ask to land those kids. But number one, dangle the carrot academically. Don't crucify a kid for where he's at academically after his freshman, sophomore year. And then two, get on him a little bit earlier. That's as much as I'm going to share there, Mike. So, Lou, thoughts?
That first one there, Mike, though, it just strikes me, though, so many times that the carrot that is being dangled out more, if you're not a strong student in the first place, and just because, you know, you might be a 2.2 GPA or so, doesn't mean that you couldn't qualify. I agree with you, but so many times I think they're looking at the path of least resistance, and the temptation that becomes for them is, hey, come over to our place here. You can just concentrate on football, and you can really, we can slide on some of these courses here. We can hide you here, and you can take online here only, and it's a breeze. You can then concentrate on football and a pro career and not have to worry about, the academic aspect of it too. And for that becomes the appealing factor for them, more so than why do I need to work at getting this kind of grade point average when this school, which is also competing for national championship, offers an easier path for me.
So you said that's the appeal for them. So
Yeah.
you're saying it's the appeal for the recruit that they don't have to.
Yes. And I think the staff does try to gauge the fit aspect of it. Is he really committed to wanting to do better academically? I think they put it out there that you need to do this, you need to take this math course, you need to take this foreign language. And the individual thinks to himself, yeah, I need to do all that, but why, when I can go to this school here, which maybe competes for a title even more, and I can concentrate on football even better.
Yeah, that is what's happening, right? I mean, I think we could all.
Well, I don't want to put it all under one umbrella that it's happening, but I think that is, when you talk about sales and sales pitches, that's one of them that comes from other schools.
That's the counter. I mean, that's yeah. So if you're LSU, I mean, that's your counter, that's your rebuttal to the Notre Dame academic pitch. But I just I look at certain guys like Justin Tuck is an incredible example of this. Like, who Justin Tuck came in as a freshman in college, and then where he's at now as a grown man, husband, father, business leader, whatever. It's remarkable. I mean, it's remarkable how much polish, how well he's been polished, and this is a guy that had a hell of an NFL career. So I just don't know. I mean, and this goes back to kind of a real painting with a broad brush here, but when you talk about Notre Dame football as a whole, it's like, yes, we're going to compete for national championships, right? We're going to get to the playoff more times than we're not. But again, we're graduating all of our players. And again, we go out into the world and we contribute, right? So if LSU is going to sign 20 kids, maybe, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 of them go pro, but then what happens to the rest of them that didn't graduate? You never hear about those kids, and they don't have any life skills, and they haven't been polished to go into the real world and contribute and make an honest living. So it's just a very matter-of-fact conversation, I feel like, because not everybody's going to make it, and even if you do make it, you're going to become a better person and a more polished human being, more refined and more prepared to go into the real world than if you go elsewhere. So I think that's just a matter of fact. And I mean, if you're trying to make that sales pitch, I mean, maybe you get a parent or parents involved to try to explain that to them and really lay it out. So,
and I think what you just said, that is the pitch they make. That is the aisle they recruit in, and that is their main sales pitch about that quote unquote 40-year decision aspect of it.
But are they going to make that pitch, Lou, to a kid with a 2.1 GPA coming out of first semester sophomore year? Maybe not. Are they just Xing that kid off a list because he's not going to be a fit? Well, he might be. Maybe he had a death in the family, who maybe moved. There's a lot of. I mean, you're talking about 14, 15-year-old kids, and we're writing them off. I hope we're not. But that's, I think, where you should give it some serious consideration, because I mean, you wouldn't have got Mike Goolsby to Notre Dame if they wouldn't have told me what I needed to do. So.
As the recruiting guy at blueandgold.com, I do feel like I need to give my 2 cents. And I've been covering Notre Dame for a year and a month, so I'm still very green here.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. It was last month. You're late. I'm very upset about it. I'm kidding. So I'm still green here, but from what I have assessed, and it does correlate a little bit with what you're saying, Mike, is I feel like they do a good job of identifying early They've got probably 70 offers out in the 2022 class already, which maybe Michigan has double that, but Clemson just started really offering 2022 guys. So there's different strategies there. But my issue comes with, and again, I'm new here, so this is just based on the year of covering Notre Dame, but they'll offer a 2022 kid, or generally speaking, a kid going into his junior year, but they don't really stay in contact, a lot of contact before September 1st of their junior year. So prior to September 1 of junior year, the kids have to call them. They've got to set up phone calls to the high school coach. So it's a little bit more of a process. So I feel like a lot of times they'll offer early and then they kind of fade off and they don't really stay into the recruitment. They kind of rely on, we'll get the kid on campus, we'll have him up for a camp, we'll have him for a game, and that's when we'll do our talking to him. But there's not a ton just, hey, hit up the high school coach, hey, have this kid every Tuesday at 7 p.m., call me, or something like that. I'm not saying this is for every recruit. A recruit I'm going to be calling here in a little bit, Caden Saunders, 4-star receiver from Ohio. He told me Dell Alexander talked to him on Tuesday. There's a recruit I talked to today from Wisconsin, a 4-star offensive lineman, Carson Hinsman. He told me that he talks to Jeff Quinn every week. So it's not across the board, but it's happened enough times where I talk to a high-profile recruit who has an offer from Notre Dame, and I'm like, what is going on here? So I'm not a person who likes to throw stuff out there, but I felt.
What are you saying, Mike? Say it with your chest. What are you saying?
That's what I'm saying. This isn't like me to be critical, but like I said, it's been enough times where I'm like, you got to build these relationships early. On Wednesday, there was a couple of big time recruits, 5-star offensive tackle Julian Armella. You guys might remember him. His dad played nose guard for Florida State, Enzo. He left Notre Dame out of his top 10 today. When I talked to him in January, he raved about the Fighting Irish. The offensive line tradition there is so great, and really wanted to get up on campus this spring. Obviously, coronavirus killed that cause, but he left Notre Dame out of his top 10. I don't know how hard Notre Dame has been pushing him since. Desan McCullough is a really good defensive player, whether he's a linebacker or a safety at the next level. Could have been a great rover. He's from Kansas. He spoke highly of Notre Dame when they offered him earlier this year. He left them out of his top 10, which it's pretty early to be doing top 10, but still it's.
But here's the thing, like regionally, we're not in an ideal location. I mean, again, just look at a map. So if a kid's from Georgia, if a kid's from down south, and I'm going to keep using that as an example, geographically speaking, they're just closer. Like I use this analogy with kids, talking to them about their recruitment. It's a lot easier to fall in love with a girl that lives 20 minutes away than it is to fall in love with a girl that's an 8-hour drive away. So because we're not necessarily in their backyard, the coaches have to do more work. And I'll tell you, when I was a big shot recruit, like the recruiting coordinator, and I remember the only coach that I remember by name that recruited me, his guy's name was Claude Bassett. I have no idea where he's at now. He was like Boss Hogg from the Dukes of Hazzard.
All right.
But he was at Kentucky, and he recruited the hell out of me. And there was dead periods, and I would work out at school. I'd go in and lift weights before school, and coach would leave the weight room open. And I swear to God, he would be in the parking lot with a white Cadillac. He couldn't talk to me. He just wanted me to know that he was there. And he'd be there, every so often. I'd be like, there he is. And he'd wave to me, and I don't know if that's breaking a rule or not, whatever. We didn't. But he put in the work. And I still, to this day, at almost 38 years old, I remember his name 20 years later because he put in the work. So there's, it's just, I think we're all kind of saying the same thing. But it's a super, super, super competitive environment for these kids. And they do want to get their ego stroked. And sometimes there's an expression, Lou, that I use sometimes, would you rather be right, as in correct, or would you rather be rich? And it's we're trying to get rich in recruiting. So you've got to make do, and you maybe have to make some exceptions and just push that much harder. But I think, to me, it starts with the academics in terms of let's not write kids off. based off of where they are so young in their high school career academically. What else you got, Mike?
I think we're going to tackle one more question. And then for next time we record, we got some good stuff. I'm going to save a couple of these that, Mike, I know you were excited about answering, but we're going to have to save them for the next podcast. So our last question we're going to tackle, we're going to go to another sponsor first. So hang on right there. Are you looking for that unique Notre Dame item for the Irish fan in your life? Visit Augie's Locker Room, the country's #1 Notre Dame memorabilia shop. They have the largest selection of Notre Dame helmets dating all the way back to the turn of the century up to present day, including the Shamrock Series helmet. They also have stadium benches, framed tickets, one-of-a-kind Rockney items, signed items, and many other unique pieces. If it's Notre Dame, they have what you're looking for. Visit them online at augieslockerroom.com or call 574-277-ND. That's augieslockerroom.com. Last question for you guys. It correlates with the first one where we talked about what does Notre Dame need to do to beat, Clemson, Bama, Ohio State. But a little bit more specific question of how many players away do you think Notre Dame is to winning a national championship? Do you think it's 2 or 3 on offense, or perhaps one monster pass rusher on defense? It's a tough question to answer, but how many players away, Mike?
Lou, do you have any thoughts? I mean, again, we already kind of touched on the edge guys. I think, again, Book needs to play like the player he is and, again, play like the man. How many players away? I think you need a special running back. I think you need, again, some more elite athleticism on the edge. And then maybe just what you'd say in general, the front seven. And I'm going to lump, obviously, linebackers into that on the defensive side of the ball.
So have we covered every position here now?
Well, so let me think. Well, you said yourself, it's a tough question to answer.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So I think, you need to get better quarterback play. A, I think you need a special running back. B, and then somebody in that front seven, you need a difference maker in that front seven. Like you can watch a game, and there's a lot of like Coach Davey used to call it oozing. There's like a lot of oozing around on the front seven. Like you don't see any, dynamic kind of playmakers, anything really jumping out at you. It's just a lot of oozing back and forth. So that's why I would say just a dynamic, either an edge guy or even a dynamic inside guy. You're like, again, you put Jalen Smith on at Notre Dame, even as a true freshman, like, damn, who's that kid? So that's my 3.
How much of it, Mike, is also, man, you just need a couple balls to bounce your way. I mean, does that have a part of it too?
Well, yeah. I mean, to me, the most critical statistic in football is a turnover, right? Is turnovers. Like, who's going to win the turnover battle? And, I mean, believe it or not, I've gone back and watched my old games, right? Like, Jesus. But there's plays against, like, USC where a ball's tipped and then, like, oh, we just don't catch it on defense. But, like, imagine how that would have shifted the tide on some of those games. And you forget about it because it was, like, 8 minutes into the fourth quarter, and we dropped the pass on defense or on offense. But all those little plays, and it goes back to what I'm talking about with poise. It's like, what the hell are we doing out here? Like, you got to make that play. You'll be remembered, like that's what you're building your legacy on, is to catch the stupid ball. So, yeah. And you got to, like, execute in those big games. You have to – and even when you get to, like – and this is, like, I try to tell the kids that I train this, Mike, and I'm going on a rant here, ready? But, like, some dudes that are playing the NFL are 34 years old. Like, hell, Charles Woodson played till he was, 38 years old? You know what I'm saying? At, like, a safety position. Charles Woodson at 38 years old is not the athlete he was at 28 or maybe even at 18. But they execute the technique better. Like offensive linemen are playing the NFL and they're 33 years old because their technique is freaking perfect and they can play. So if you're lining up against a kid that maybe is a better athlete than you, and sometimes it's okay to say, that guy's a better athlete than me, but I got to beat him with my technique. So sometimes in those big games, like, lean on your technique because you maybe are a little bit outgunned because this guy's a future first-round draft pick. And he's a monster, but I got to beat him with my technique, beat him with my fundamentals, beat him with my poise to even the playing field. So, everybody wants to point the finger and say, you need a better athlete, you need more speed here. Yes. But if you don't have it, you got to make do with what you've got, and you've got to get the most out of your ability. And again, that's the poise, that's the technique, that's the execution in those big games. Because go back, I beg people, watch the first series against Georgia last year. It was a shit show. It was a shit show. And then Book makes a play on like 3rd and 18. The ball snapped over his head, and we dropped the pass. Could have been a first down. So you take that. Now we're in that environment, and then and then we're off the field, and then it's just a different scenario had we executed on that first drive. So. Rant over.
It's not just the players, but you need to have the confluence with the coaching too. I mean, how many times have we sometimes said the best team in the last decade under Brian Kelly probably was that 2015 team when you look at the overall talent, because the offense alone, you had a 2nd-round quarterback and Kaiser, Poise, and Adams in the backfield 3rd round. 3 of the offensive linemen were 1st-round picks. Another was a 2nd-round pick. You had a 1st-round receiver in Will Fuller. Defensively, all 4 guys on the front line are in the pros right now. Jalen Smith was the Butkus Award winner. And you say to yourself, that defense could have had Clark Lee maybe coordinating it instead of Brian Van Gorder. How much more effective would it have been? You can have the players sometimes, but you also need the instruction and the coaching. Sometimes you'll have a player at one position and you're saying, we just lack it here. And then you get that position, and then the next year that player graduates. In college football, it's not like you can start 22 50-year seniors who have 30, 35 career starts under their belt and everything. There's always going to be inexperience or an area that needs to be plugged. As a program, you need to be a consistent recruiting force. Like out of 4 or 5 years, you can't have 1 or 2 classes that are ranked 25th, 30th, or whatever. Notre Dame's been consistent at getting 10 through 15 to 20 or so. That's what's keeping them in the conversation. But you also need to just be the 2 positions, I think more than ever, quarterback. You go from about 1965 to 2003. The only 2 quarterbacks who were national champions who went on to have prominent pro careers were Joe Montana at Notre Dame and Bernie Kosar at Miami. Everyone else, it was sort of like they were not game managers, but, a Buck Bellew, a Jay Barker, a John Schaefer, a Tommy Frazier, a Tony Rice. They were either option or other specialists who weren't necessarily pro prospects. But when you started getting the Vince Youngs, the way the game has changed with the spread, the Vince Youngs at Texas, who could just put the team on his back, account for 500 yards total offense himself in a game against USC.
Lou, I got to stop you. So, yeah, we're saying we're Vince Young, Johnny Manziel, Baker Mayfield, you name it.
Tim Tebow, Cam Newton, you have.
So can I stop you?
Yeah.
When we go back and play those games in your head, are those kids having fun when they're playing quarterback? Were they?
Yeah, I'm sure they were. When they were winning, that helps tremendously.
But so but I think they're allowed to have fun because you're sprinkling a little bit more of that backyard element into their game. So if you try and put Vince Young in a square box and say, do this, or you're off the field. So again, who's the quarterback we talked about, Mike? His name's escaping me. The kid from California committed.
Buckner.
Yeah.
Buckner. That's a big part of his game. And trust him. You signed him. You're going to roll him out there. If he becomes the guy down the road here, don't take that out of his game. Don't. You got to live with the good and you're going to live with the bad. So, and let the kids have fun, and then they don't play with, a pucker, what. I think that's a big part of it. The big part of it.
Yeah.
Let them go play, and they're having fun. Like Johnny Manziel was out there having fun.
Even Alabama for a while under Saban, Greg McElroy or an A.J. McCarron, they weren't Cam Newton or Tim Tebow or Vince Young type of figures who could just dominate with their arms or legs physically.
But Saban's evolved though.
Yeah.
I mean, they were like a Stanford. They would just beat you up, massive dudes, and just run the ball. And now he's kind of evolved.
And defensively, if I had to pick one element, it's the pass rushing terror off the edge. where on every single play, the offense has to account for you. And whether it was Alan Page in the 60s or Ross Browner in the 70s, Frank Stamps for the 88 national championship team, Bryant Young in 93, Stephon Tuitt, who had 12 sacks for that 2012 unit, a unit that averaged only 25.8 points a game. This was able to rely so much on its defense. So you get that combination of that terror along the defensive edge or line. And
who's going to be that? Who's going to be that guy, Lou, that defensive coordinator's got to, or excuse me, the offensive coordinator has got to circle. But, you know.
I mean, you were hoping it's Dalen Hayes. Now, he's had multiple shoulder surgeries. He came in as a 5-star recruit. There's that ability there. The first day you saw him, you say, that's what you're talking about from the eye test and just the physical attributes that he possessed. That's somebody you hope for. An Ade Ogundeji has developed. You hope Isaiah Foskey. I mean, that's another guy. Came from Concord de La Salle there, powerhouse program.
Who's number 18 on the team? Or Lou, you know. He's got a unique last name. I think he's a sophomore. Nana? Come again?
Nana.
Yes. I've seen his high school tape, and he's one of those freaky, bendy, edge type guys. And I don't know, you know, yeah. Again, I'm not in the meeting rooms and stuff, but I really like that kid. In terms of just raw ability, like LSU's always got those guys. Like whether it's Arden Key or like Barkevius Mingo, who's the 6th pick overall in the draft to Cleveland Browns. He looks like a wide receiver.
Yeah.
But, you know, he could get around the edge. But anyways.
Nana Asafo Mensah. I did not cover him as a recruit, so I did not get to be familiar with that last name.
Go watch some of his highlight tapes and like some of his one-on-one pass rushes at these camps and stuff. That kid he's like Gumby off the edge. And it's hard to put. Last thing, I just started training here, a kid in Omaha. His name's Devin Jackson, and his father was a 2-time captain at University of Illinois. He's played safety. His mother ran track at Illinois. They both went to Illinois. So athletic genetic background. Kid's a freak. Freaky. He's 200 pounds, and he's like so sudden. But like those are the types of guys that like, let's go after this kid, because he's just like he's here and he's gone, and he's done a couple things working out with him where it's literally giving me goosebumps because people shouldn't be able to bend at the speed that he can. And again, to your point, Lou, those are those guys you need. And if they're not a polished player as a true freshman or even a redshirt freshman, sprinkle them in. Let them get 12 snaps on third downs and start building, you know? So.
Devin Jackson, Omaha Burke, 4-star outside linebacker in the 2022 class, teammate of Xavier Watts, Notre Dame receiver signee. So Notre Dame is looking at Devin. He's a good little player. But maybe he's a monster, so I shouldn't call him a little player because he's a beast.
Yeah, he's not a huge guy, frame wise or height wise, but yeah, he's whatever he is, 6'2", 200 pounds as going to be a rising junior.
Yeah. So
I don't know. I just I don't know. I could go on and on, but you're looking for specific body types sometimes, Lou, some height weight combination. Like, okay, that's our framework that we're going to look for this player. But if a kid's maybe he's going to end up being 25 pounds lighter than you want, but maybe he still has the ability to get to – all we're trying to do is get to the quarterback, right? So if he's not 265, that doesn't mean he can't play. So anyway.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Irish Huddle. Appreciate everybody listening and watching. We'll be back in a couple weeks with a new episode. Quick preview, a snippet of one of the questions. Mike, you played for two coaches during your career at Notre Dame who are not well remembered by the fan base. Curious to know what it was like playing for both staffs and if you think they were criticized fairly, unfairly, or not criticized enough. So don't answer it yet, Mike. A couple weeks. We're going to hear your thoughts on that, and that's going to do it for this episode of the Irish Huddle.